recognize the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the panel for being here. Very important topic. I watched very carefully during the pandemic the remarkable work that community banks did with the PPP. They really were life-saving for a lot of businesses, and am very conscious of the power of relationship banking. But I have two concerns. I arrived here in January of 2009 as the wreckage of the mortgage crisis smoked around us. And so I'm super conscious of efforts that are sort of ongoing and always deregulatory. And the Congress obviously has always been amenable to having tailored regulation for community and smaller banks. But I fear that the pressures associated with economies of scale on the community banks are so intense that it'll be very hard without creating risk in the system of doing a whole lot more deregulation. That's a whole other conversation because I actually want to take the conversation in a slightly different but related direction, which is housing. We have a just shocking housing supply crisis in this country, certainly where I come from. And the multifamily business at the GSEs has been resilient and helpful to the construction, in particular, of multifamily housing. But there's only a small number, 30, I think, of lenders that are authorized to access the program. So my question, and maybe I can start with Ms. Rainey, but if we have time, we'll go to others, would really emphasizing and incentivizing community banks to be, or other small lenders, to get multifamily licenses and to access that program, would that be both a additional source of business for our community banks and maybe actually help with our housing crisis?
Yes, I think, as we think about solving for the housing crisis, it's about creating as many opportunities and solutions as we can. So multiple points of access and various partners to work with are a tremendous part of the solution.
So why have historically, I was trying to figure this out earlier, why these 25 DUS lenders, they tend to be the big guys. Why is that true? How can we make it easier for community banks to be as involved as the big guys are in multifamily housing?
So I'm not specifically experienced with the program, but my experience would tell you that when we look at the size of transactions that we're dealing with multifamily, that may limit when you think about whether it's lending limits or concentration limits that community banks have to manage. And again, this is an area where a solution to this problem is how do we facilitate partnership and ability for community banks to work together to provide that single credit in coordination with the entity.
Any other thoughts on again, I come at this thinking that we could just deregulate ourselves into catastrophe in the very noble pursuit of trying to keep the independent and community banks alive. So my mind does go to what other sources of business are there for the smaller banks. Any other thoughts on multifamily lending from the panel? I guess not. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
I think there's plenty.
Go ahead, sir.
I think there's plenty of opportunity. I'm frankly not familiar with that program, and I made a note. I'm going to find out about it. But I do think there's plenty of opportunities for multifamily. I mean, housing is a big issue. There's a lot of government guaranteed programs that a lot of, frankly, people just don't know about. So as a lawyer advising community banks, that's one of the things that we like to try to do. So it's important that those kinds of programs and the agencies that are responsible for them get that word out. Can be done on a local basis and frankly, a national basis as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that, and yield back.